Okay. Got it. Okay, can you hear me now? All right, thank you, Susan. And I want to say welcome to everyone for joining tonight. It's always a pleasure having each and every single one of you here in, the virtual House of Labor. And we have a packed agenda tonight. So hopefully you stay tuned to the agenda and we're going to start off our meeting as others continue to join our meeting. So there's so much things that was happening, I would say, for the last few weeks. And I hope most of you got a chance to participate in all the different action that was happening. Everything is moving so fast. The time is passing so fast. I have to say, like, for all of us that always use the word that times fly, it's really true. Just last week I was at the Toronto Metropolitan University strike. That's the TMU for strike support for our QP comrades, and also at the PSAC picket line at the airport rally. Before that, I have to tell you, it was really good just going out to support myself, and also Susan went out and seeing all these buses just unloading all their members, probably more than 10 buses that came out to the airport, strong and taking on this fight. That was great. We also were observing the day of mourning in Toronto and also in York region, and then holding the Health and Safety Activist Awards last week. For anyone that attended the two locations for the day of mourning and also for the Health and Safety Awards dinner that we had at the Dan Valley Suites, thank you very much for coming out and for us remembering our comrades, for co-workers, family members that passed away due to workplace illness or disease, and for others that came out again for the activist dinner to acknowledge and appreciate the activists that's out there that have been doing the work when it comes to health and safety. But again, we got to know that, as I say, time fly. We are in May. In May month is here, and again, we started by marking May Day, International Workers' Day, in the events of rallies and marches. I get to speak at one of these events, but for others that went out there just to show, and celebrate May Day and to acknowledge the kind of struggles that's in front of us. Again, many of you also know that May is the Asian Heritage Month. It's a time for us to reflect and to recognize the many contributions that Canadians of Asian heritage have made and to continue to make to Canada. This Labour Council attend the Railroad Workers Ceremony on July 1st each year to pay respect to Chinese railroad workers who risked their lives, and so many of them that also died building the railroad that connect this country. I also want to recognize the presence of many Asian Canadian activists amongst us, those who are East Asian, South Asian, Southeast Asian to the Middle East. Thank you for your continued advocacy in making this region a better one. Okay, so later this evening, you will hear from Comrade Kingsley Kwok, an activist of APSU, who will talk to us about Asian Heritage Month and what this month means for us. For now, let's open up the meeting and get into business, since it have a packed agenda, as I mentioned early on. If Jinky is here, I'm gonna call on Jinky to read the harassment statement.
Good evening, brothers, sisters, comrades, and friends. This is our harassment statement. Mutual respect, cooperation, and understanding are strongly held principles of a trade union movement. We will neither condone nor tolerate harassing or discriminatory behavior that creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment and undermines the dignity or self-esteem of any individual. An injury to one is an injury to all. Speech or conduct which is racist, sexist, homophobic, or discriminatory in any way is unacceptable to trade unionists and only serves to divide us. Our policies and practices must reflect this commitment to equality as we work together for justice and dignity in our workplace, our unions, and our communities. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And up next for the land acknowledgement, Comrade Jeff.
Thank you, President Babington. Good evening, delegates, guests, friends, all of you. We are meeting on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, which was subject to the Dish with One Spoon Treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Let's have a great meeting and an even better Leaf game.
Okay,
Over to
Jeff.
you, President Babington.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, please don't lower away the delegates to any Leaf game.
Oh, they're all dedicated and they're all here tonight.
Thank
Some
you.
of us might go off camera, to be honest, but we're here.
Okay. Okay, and as usual, I want us to recognize any first-time delegates, and if anyone is here for the first time, this is the opportunity. If you could raise your hand so we could acknowledge you. Starting off with you just saying your name and your union. Anyone here for the first time, please raise your hand. Okay, I see, is it Corey?
Yeah, Corey Rutledge, I'm with Local 416.
Okay, welcome, Corey. Anyone else? Okay, I'm just checking my screen, make sure I'm not missing anyone. I did that last month, I missed someone. Okay, I don't see anyone else there. I know we have someone that I missed last month, and I'm still fine to have an introduction if that person is on, but I'll keep moving.
Oh, Chris York has just raised their hand.
Okay, Chris.
Hello.
Go ahead.
I'm Chris York. I'm with Local 27.
Carpenter, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, check. Okay, I don't see anyone else. Okay, I see Dave. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wonder, the first person to introduce themselves said that they were with Local 416, and I'm thinking, could people as they introduce themselves indicate not just the local, but the actual union they're a member of? Because as you said, the last person, you said, oh, they're with carpenters. Could we just help out people to say I'm with the carpenters or with CUPE or whatever it might be, and then say the local number?
Okay, points taken. So the person who introduced as 416, I think that was Corey. Corey, if you don't mind just saying which union?
CUPE Local 416, City of Toronto, outside workers.
Okay, thank you very much, Corey. Okay. Okay, I think that's it so far. Okay. Thank you. So again, you are amongst activists, and you're amongst I would say friends, comrades, brothers, sisters when you attend this meeting. And I just want to say, if it's your first time here, as mentioned, I hope it's not your last meeting. It is a great place for us to really talk about the issues and to celebrate issues and to strategize as we move forward when we take on these issues. So again, I want to welcome you to our delegates meeting. Okay, and I hope you got the minutes from our previous meeting ahead of time. That would have been sent out by email. And at this point, if everything is fine with that, I'm going to call for a vote. This is also done electronically. We usually put the poll out for that. So I'm gonna maybe first ask for a motion from you to accept the minutes. Anyone want to?
I can do that. Carol Carpenter, Local 4400.
Okay, thank you. And is there a seconder?
Richardo Harvey, OSS TF District 12, Toronto.
Thank you very much.
Seconded the motion.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll put the poll up to vote on it. Is there a poll? Okay. Okay, so the vote, the poll is up. All in favor, please signify. Any opposed, please signify. Any abstain, please signify.
Yeah, I'll give it another 3 seconds and I'm going to end the poll. 3, 2, 1. And Madam President, that's passed.
Okay, thank you very much. And next, we're going to ask if anyone is here for strike or lockout report. If someone is here for strike or lockout, please raise your hand. Okay.
I don't see any hands up, Andrea. I know we did have regrets from Craig Reynolds, who's the regional director of PSAC, because he's actually himself in bargaining this evening. But I guess we've given an opportunity for others to step forward.
Yeah. Okay. So right now there is no one, so we will, and if no one else is here that want to speak, we'll move on the agenda. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on. I'm gonna, before we go any further, I really want us to take a moment, and this is for a moment of silence for a friend, a sister, a comrade that we lost recently. Some of you might have heard Carol Wall recently passed away. This news was very heartbreaking, and I have to say, really shocked. Anyone who know her would be shocked by it because Carol embodied so many energies and spirit and courage to stand up against the status quo. We have been deeply pained by this news because her death leave a huge vacuum in the life of those who knew her, and even those who might not have known her, but have felt the impact of her life's work in challenging the status quo within the labor movement and challenging racism and injustice. Our deepest condolence to her family during this time. I really want to extend that. You know, Carol really touched the heart of so many of us. She was like a part of our family, I would say. She was like that elder who would be there, not just to really console us, but to really empower us with a voice and to speak out and to support each other along the way. You know, and I want to ask for a moment of silence to honor Sister Carol and her life work. So at this time, could we have a moment of silence, please? Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. We have a guest speaker with us this evening. Christopher Sutat Mung is the executive director of the Hong Kong Labor Rights Monitor, which is a newly established UK-based organization. Before locating to the UK in exile, he was the chief executive of Hong Kong Confederation of Trade Union. That was disbanded under political attack in 2021. So I'm gonna turn over to Christopher. Christopher, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for chairperson. Hello everyone. Good evening. Thanks for giving me this chance to share with you the grave situation of the Hong Kong labor movement under the national security law. Yeah. Can you watch the PowerPoint? Yeah.
You can see it.
It's been launched. I've launched it.
Sorry. Does it work? Yeah. I would like to share with you about the situation of Hong Kong labor movement. Our General Secretary, Bada Lee Chuk-yen, and our chairperson, Carol Ng, have been in prison for more than 2 years. Bada Lee Chuk-yen was charged against the inciting subversion of state power because he insists on the slogan, ending one-party dictatorship in China. And Carol Ng, our former chairperson, was facing the political persecution of subversion of state power because she participated into the Legislative Council primary election with the other Democrats. And other trade union leader facing the same charge is Winnie Yu, who was the chairperson of the Hospital Staff Union. Under the national security law, the trials are conducted by the state-assigned judges without a jury, and most of the defendants are denied the right to bail. And our confederation, HKCTU, as the only democratic and independent national center in Hong Kong, was also targeted by the authorities. The HKCTU was attacked by the regime very intensively. We were labeled as a subversive organization, and some of our core members were warned by the Chinese agents to resign from their posts or to dissolve the organization. I myself was interviewed by the Chinese agents 3 times in a month. They kept asking me about the internal information and the links with foreign groups. Under the threat of political arrest, I have made a very painful decision to leave the city I have grown up and I love so much with my families. And now I am living in UK in exile. At the end, the Confederation was forced to disband in October 2021 for the safety of our members. And the Chinese government not only target on the labor movement, but also to dismantle the civil society as a whole. More than 60 civil society organizations and more than 170 trade unions were disbanded under the political pressure. And more than 250 people were arrested by the charge of endangering the interests of national security. 150 of them were prosecuted by the administration, and most of the people are actually exercising their freedom of expression, their freedom of association, their freedom of speech. None of them are criminals in reality. And the political crackdown has actually created white terror and chilling effects in the society. In the case of the Union of Language Linguistics, five of the committee members were arrested because they published 3 children picture books. At the end, these 5 people were charged against the sedition of publication and were sentenced for 19 months. And the intimidation against the labor activists have not ended. And until very recently, in March, another activist, Elizabeth Tan, who is the General Secretary of the International Domestic Workers Federation, and also the former Chief Executive of HKCTU, and also the wife of Bada Lee Cheuk-yan. She was arrested by the suspicion of collusion with foreign force when she was visiting her husband in prison. And some of the former HKCTU members were also taken away by the National Security Police for investigation again and again. And we haven't seen the end of the intimidation against the labor activists in Hong Kong. Despite the desperate situation, however, some of our former affiliates unions still manage to survive. Of course, they cannot raise their political demands on the street as they did before. However, they are still working very hard to stay at the workplace they represent by handling the workers' grievances, by providing some education training to their members, and by bargaining over some daily issues in the workplace with their employers. However, they are very isolated and helpless, lacking resource and manpower in the absence of the support given by the umbrella organization. And all the international connection has to be cut off under the threat of national security law. At the same time, the workers are finding the new ways to struggle spontaneously. For example, since September 2021, the foodpanda delivery workers have organized themselves. They have organized 3 times strike without the intervention of the trade unions. They organize themselves through the social medias, and some of the labor activists behind the scene provide support to them by, for example, contacting with the media and providing some training for them to bargain with their employers. So what we have seen the workers in Hong Kong that do not give up their struggle, and some of the remaining trade unions are still working very hard to survive. However, it is almost impossible for the trade unions on the ground to contact with the outside world under the threat of national security law. It is too easy for them to fall into the trap, such as collusion with foreign force. Therefore, some of the labor activists living in exile in UK formed the new organization, Hong Kong Labor Rights Monitor, to bridge up the gap between the trade unions on the ground and the international community. And because of the constraint of the time, I will stop here, but it is my pleasure to be invited to attend the CLC Congress in the coming days. And also many thanks for holding a talk in Toronto for me. You are very welcome to join us for this activity to have more discussion about the past and future of the labor activism in Hong Kong. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Christopher, for joining us and sharing with us. And I just want to let you know also that, as Christopher mentioned, there's other opportunity to hear him speak further, and maybe another way to, if you are attending the CLC conference, Christopher will be speaking on Sunday, May 7th from at 7 p.m. In Montreal. So if you are already planning to attend that conference, I hope you're able to slot in some time or arrive early to join in and opportunity to speak to Christopher a little bit more in person than we are doing right now. But I want to say thank you. This is very important for us to hear about what's happening with the labor movement in Hong Kong. And we are one. The struggles are at different places, but it's the same fight. So I invite everyone who's attending the CLC conference to make sure that when you get there, you find the location and hear some more from Christopher. Thank you very much, Christopher, for joining us, and I hope to see you on Sunday.
Yeah, I hope to see you in person in Montreal in CLC Congress. And thanks for your support and concern in solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so as I mentioned early on, for May month that we're in with so many things that's happening, and and again, recognizing Asian Heritage Month. I'm going to turn it over to Kingsley Kwok, Kingsley is also the executive board member, our executive board member, and he's going to talk a bit about Asian Heritage Month and to introduce a video that we are going to play. So Kingsley, I'm going to turn over to you now.
Thanks, Andrea. Comrades, friends, sisters, and brothers, happy Asian Heritage Month. And in case you didn't know, Parliament declared May to be Asian Heritage Month, and then the Ontario Legislative Assembly declared May to be South Asian Heritage Month. So happy South Asian Heritage Month. Whenever we talk about heritage, there's an element of where do we come from? A sense of history and memory. And of course, in the labor movement, we remember and then we commit to take action. And so there is a video that Jennifer Wong and I looked at that really capture elements of history and then taking action. And we thought that we would like to share that with you. And we will just cue that up.
The first time my grandchild asks, and they will, "Where were you?" A history book will unfold before my eyes, brittle spine snapping like a leather belt, some pages yet unwritten dripping with the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors who crossed an ocean seeking a dream that turned out to be more like a myth. Where were you? When CPR foremen sent trembling Chinamen with frail fingers into the tunnels with sticks of dynamite, where were you? When head tax and immigration acts shut the door to the motherland, splitting countless Asian families down the middle like steamed pork buns, where were you? When the boat people landed in the dead of winter, promptly pushed to the ghettos like the rest of the rabble, when Nikkei fishing boats were impounded, their nets deemed a threat to wartime security, 22,000 Japanese sent to the mountains to concentrate on all the ways they weren't Canadian enough. The first time my grandchild comes to me with puffy eyes, asking me where I was the first time I got called a chink, asking me why it still hurts this bad in a country that says it welcomes us all, I will be forced to contend with all the times I've kept my head down and pulled my bootstraps up. A history of silence that speaks louder than a Hiroshima bomb. We have never been a loud people, just hardworking. After all, chopsticks and stones can break your bones, but words will never hurt you, right? So study hard, Zai. Don't talk back. We are lucky to be here, to be doctors, lawyers, engineers. Railroads and laundromats to prosperity and graduation caps. They might not love us like they love our food, but they pay our mortgages while we pay our dues. When my grandchild asks, "So what did you do?" When they knelt on a black man's neck till he died. When they trespassed and attacked First Nations healing camps. When they called it Kung Flu and spit on our grandmas at bus stops. What did you do? And where were you? When black Canadians paved the way for our emancipation. When local natives pulled our broken bodies from collapsed railroad tunnels and nursed us back to health bending cedar and weaving bamboo, did you fight for them when they fought for you? I want to tell them. We tried. We stood. We fought. We could. No longer only doctors, lawyers, engineers, but artists, athletes, allies, activists. Every Chinatown and Little Manila an act of defiance. Every stoic action mistaken for silence. Here we are on the shoulders of humble giants. Their guidance meant survival so that we can now speak, so we can now strive, so we can now struggle, so we can now thrive. When they ask me what I did, I want to tell them, I tried.
So the website is acttoendracism.ca. They have more than one video, and this one spoke to both Jennifer and me. I want to remind or recognize that Asia is a vast, a big continent with many peoples, many cultures, many countries in the continent. And so this is our small way to commemorate Asian Heritage Month. And we ask your affiliates to consider celebrating Asian Heritage Month in your own way. Finally, the Equity Committee and Labor Community Services want to show you a profile of an Asian activist, and we're going to cue that up. Keith Meneses is an activist from the United Steelworkers and a co-chair of Toronto and York Region Labor Council Equity Committee. And I actually can't read everything, but Keith will be making a report from the Equity Committee later on in the agenda. Keith's work in human rights extend to his role as chairperson of Steelworkers Toronto Area Council Human Rights Committee. His ability to provide gentle and decisive leadership has seen him hold the office of president and vice president of his Steelworkers Local 9197. A firm believer in acting for change, Keith was a candidate in the 2014 and 2018 Richmond Hill City Council elections. Solidarity, Keith. Andrea, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kingsley. All right, so we are going to move on to the agenda to talk a bit about the by-election that's coming up. And I hope most of you are following the other meetings where we talk a bit, we give some update with the process. And so far, our election planning committee have been meeting. And I have to tell you, they've been doing a lot of work to fulfill the mandate of our campaign action plan. That work also involved evaluating the candidates and their campaign through campaign promises. The work involved polling data, their history of working with labor, and of course through the direct interviews that is also done. The last few weeks, the election planning committee met with several candidates who requested consideration for endorsement. Skylar will provide you with more details shortly. And as you know, Skylar have been working very hard on, to get us ready for this upcoming election. So Skylar will give you a little bit more detail. We also found that there are several whose work are aligned well with ours, and a few who have potential to really go the distance. However, in the discussion that we had this week, it also became very clear that the strongest path forward for our big tent of Labor Ally, our diverse election planning committee, is to build an issue-based campaign. We decided we'll be pushing forward key issues of interest to labor and to all workers. We'll be working towards a better understanding and engagement with this election, encouraging members to vote and to have good conversation at the dinner table and on the shop floor about what matter. I think that's very important. We talk early on when we started talking about this election to come, that it's really not about just getting the candidate, but we got to do the work in terms of making sure that we are, our members are focused on the issues, the key issues. and mobilizing them to vote as well, and spreading this to have the conversation at their kitchen table, have it within their workplace, at in their cafeteria, because that's how I think we're going to make progress. If it doesn't make sense if you line someone up and then we have low voters turnout. I think most important, we'll be ready. We are going to be ready in ourselves to win these issues with whoever become the mayor, whoever, after the 26th, whoever become, we got to get ourselves organized for the work ahead of that. We need to send the message loud and clear to the new mayor that this will also be hard at Queen's Park and on Parliament Hill, because the fight for Better Toronto, in many ways, it's a fight in all three halls of power. It's not just one level. This is a big fight, and so we have to really get ready and whoever is in that seat to push. And at this time, I think it's very important that we're keeping our eye on the prize. And to do that, I think we really have to look at how we're going to get ready, and fully understand when we say issue-based, what does that mean? So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Skylar, who will give us a little bit more detail on the by-election and Labor's role. Skylar, over to you.
Thanks, Andrea. I'm going to share my screen, so hopefully this works out for everyone. Okay, and with some apologies to folks who may have seen parts of this presentation in the past. So I think that most of you know, but just to repeat, I'm an organizer with the Labor Council, but for the sake of this election, I am the municipal campaigner. So the coordination with the EPC has been primarily my responsibility, but with other Labor Council staff as well. So that's why I'm presenting to you today. So I just want to draw your attention to the fact that we're talking about political bargaining for workers. So this is just another way of kind of like shifting your attention onto what the significance of elections are for us. I know lots of people here have been around this before, and others might be new to it. So that's the frame that we're trying to build out for you today. Don't worry, this is not that many slides. Okay, so these are what we kind of thought were the key issues in Toronto in 2023. And you're probably seeing them in the media and feeling them in your actual life. Affordability, climate change, declining services caused by decades of austerity, and social and racial injustices. And these are the things that were identified in the campaign action plan as well. And we are facing a number of challenges heading into this election. These things are already in place and they're just becoming bigger issues and kind of central to the campaign to a large extent, to the election period, I should say. So the first one is strong mayor powers. And if you're not familiar, these are kind of the 4 areas that are new to the mayor's office. A lot of people thought that the mayor had these powers before, but the mayor did not. The mayor was but one vote on council. And most of their authority was related to the mandate that they get elected by the whole city and in their ability to kind of, influence and build a team and appoint an executive. But this has been a major challenge. We saw it in the budget, not least of all because the budget process was interrupted by the fact of the past mayor resigning, but then not fully resigning until after the budget happened. And so it just is showing that there's a lot of holes in how we understand these strong mayor powers to work. And that means that there's a lot of, obviously there's strong powers. So there's a lot of potential risk associated with whoever is holding those powers and whether they choose to use them and how. So the next piece is the budget pressures that the city faces. So you may have heard a little bit about this, but because of the pressures of COVID on the city's budget, there was, so this number it shifts around, 1.2, $1.5 billion gap for 2023. That means these are dollars that when the city passed the budget earlier this year, when council passed the budget earlier this year, they were assuming that the federal and provincial governments were going to step up and fill this hole, and they have not yet done so. So this is something that the new mayor is going to have to tackle immediately, and it's being asked constantly of these candidates, and certainly your EPC was asking these questions as well. And the problems with the budget go back much further than COVID. Council's been relying on the reserve funds of the city to fill the holes that have been in place for a long time. We have a problem with declining TTC ridership and the problem of the fare box trying to cover operating costs for the TTC, and that shouldn't really be, that's not a very sustainable model, and it's also not fair to riders. We have the problem of just really kind of an imbalance in revenue tools that are currently being used. Some of them are being relied on too much. So without getting too much into the weeds on that, the question of how are you going to pay for the city that you want to build is a really significant one for any mayoral candidate. And the third piece is maybe the biggest looming piece, but it does fit in with the first two, which is, how are you as the mayor going to get things done with other orders of government? And in particular, how are you going to get things done with a provincial government, which does, the city is the creature of the province? How are you going to get things done with a provincial government that is really hostile to the city of Toronto overall? And these two bills that are mentioned here, 23 and 39, Labour Council recently passed a policy statement covering those two. I think it was in January, so you can take a look at that if you don't remember the details, but we've outlined it there. And so just to kind of bring it back to our plan, Labour Council has these strategic goals for our EPC, and this is what they're working through, and connects to both the work that we're doing to interview and ask questions of candidates, and also the issue-based campaign, which would be more public-facing, which is one, to solidify the election of a pro-worker and pro-labor candidate, and we've given some details on what that would look like. Two, to strengthen the labor movement in Toronto. This is like a really important one that we almost didn't even include it originally when we were drafting up these points, because it seemed to be obvious, but it's actually not. We have to consciously grow our movement, and remember that doing that means reaching out to people who may not be like us, so that we can be stronger together on issues that we do actually agree on. And then the third one is to build power, and that really kind of stems from number two, but it also involves you getting more comfortable with having these types of conversations, having some tools in your pocket to be able to ask candidates when they come knock on your door, learning a little bit more about how to get involved in campaigns, or even just to have a conversation with a family member about these things. All of this is building power, because these are things that we can also use when we're not just political bargaining, but also when we're bargaining for our jobs as well. So these are skills. And so those are some of the things that we're working on through this campaign. And then the last, second last, so just because people were going to ask us, we want to be really clear. These are the 7 candidates that approached Labour Council because they were interested in being considered for endorsement. And the EPC, in their process of figuring out how they're going to do their endorsements, just had 2 rules to invite people. And one was that you had to ask us, and the second one was that you needed to be registered as a candidate. And so these 7 interviews have already been conducted and were part of our consideration process in the last couple of weeks. And I'll just add that all of these candidates were great. I think the EPC will probably have a little bit more on this at some point in the future, but or at least Labour Council will, but just to say that they were really interesting interviews, and I'll leave it at that. And the last piece I want to leave you with is about labor's role. And again, I'm going to bring it back to labor's role in political bargaining, not just in the election, but certainly in this election. So these are kind of like the four things that I wanted to hammer home here. We've got to stop the right wing from coming in and seizing power. It's caused problems for us. The last two mayors have been conservative mayors. Here we are with this giant fiscal hole, not just from COVID, but from like a dozen years and more of austerity. We need to be electing stable, democratic, and progressive leadership. We need to make Toronto a livable city for all. And while we talk about our unions and what's important for our municipal locals and the ones that are bargaining directly with the city, like that's really important work that we need to be fighting for. But we also need to be fighting for things that are going to make life better for all workers inside the union and outside of the union. The second you step outside of your house, you're interacting with city property probably, and even inside your house, you flick a light switch. So it affects all of us all the time. And the last one is, and certainly not least, solidarity and strength of unions and working people. We can't win anything if we're not united. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. And I just wanted to add one last thing, which is that we're going to have actions and tools and all kinds of things kind of rolling out over the next little while. And we'll be really excited to share that with you. And you can keep an eye out at laborcouncil.ca/events. And that's the end.
Okay, thank you, Skylar. Okay, so if anyone have any question, please feel free to raise your hand. All right. I don't think is that Miles? Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Andrea and Skylar, for excellent presentations. I think I just want to emphasize the point that this election really is critical for the future direction of the city because of the new strong mayor powers, because of the attack on municipal democracy that the Ford government has been waging, particularly in Toronto, since the day they were elected, because of the crisis in the city of 8 years of John Tory's austerity, balanced budget. Well, they have to balance the budgets, but his refusal to contemplate any kind of either property tax increase above the rate of inflation, but more importantly, looking at other funding tools and to really put pressure on the province and the federal government to fill the fiscal gap that exists in the city of Toronto and other municipalities because of the retreat of the province and the federal government from things like ongoing operating funding for the TTC, which is, of course, the backbone of the city for working people. So I hope that that all unions, all affiliates are prepared to get involved in this campaign, to talk to their members about how crucial these issues are, about the importance of them actually getting out to vote and to vote for a progressive mayoral candidate whose policy in their mind best represents the kinds of priorities that Skylar's presentation talked about. It's really, really important. We're kind of in new waters, in unprecedented territory, because we've never had this kind of by-election in the city of Toronto before, or at least not within my memory. And so it's hard to say whether the model will be like a provincial or a municipal or a federal by-election, where the turnout may be low, in which case Labor's votes and an organized outreach to our members for folks to educate themselves and get familiar with the issues and cast their vote is going to be tremendously, tremendously important. To stand up for good jobs, to stand up for quality public services, to stand up for union rights, the municipality, Toronto's fair wage policy, Toronto's Transform TO climate action policy, and to make sure that the city remains an important support for working people in the city.
Thank you, Miles. Okay. Okay, I'm just looking if anyone else have their hand up.
You've got Karen Ebanks there, Andrea.
Karen, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Skylar, for the outstanding presentation. It really does bring home the importance of the issues. I'm just wondering here, are we going to have an endorsement from Toronto and York Region Labour Council? And I'm wondering as well approximately how close we would be to hearing such an endorsement, just to sort of get that sense.
Okay. So, Skylar, if you want to touch on our last meeting.
Sure. So the EPC met yesterday, and in considering the different candidates and considering positions, I just want to be clear, first of all, about the process. Let me actually roll it back a little bit to process, because I meant to talk about this as well. The EPC makes a recommendation to the executive board. The executive board considers that recommendation, and if it's accepted, it advances to the delegates. So there's 3 stages, but the EPC's recommendation is a consensus decision. And so what the conversation that was had yesterday is that consensus didn't feel likely at that meeting, and to move forward with an issues-based campaign. So that's the presentation that you're getting today.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope I'm not missing anyone. I'm not seeing anyone else. Okay. Okay, thank you, Skylar. All right. So before we move to the next issue, I also want to bring to your attention about, we have many important municipal issues that we're fighting. One that will go to the Toronto City Council next week. And if any of you participate a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, with the holiday shopping, we won successfully to keep the big retail corporation closed on Good Friday, on Canada Day, and Christmas Day, New Year's, and more, right? That was very important for a number of our unions that have members who have to go out there and work, right? I think about, just think about those workers. Often low-paid women. Those are low-paid women who have to give up their family plan at the whim of employer to go and sell, for example, just a pair of shoes and some groceries, or even the new sheets that's out. This was definitely, we heard from workers' stories as during those deputation of the impact for them on these holidays, who have to go out and also have the right to spend those time with their family. And now, again, I have to tell you, it's up again. This issue it's open up again. Some councillors have asked that City Council approve a plan to open Yorkdale, Scarborough Town Centre, and these important family holidays. And we are working hard to stop this nasty business. So once the gap is there and it's back up again, and we got to continue to make sure that we take this on. It's very important. It doesn't matter if it's another location or in some way where council say it's about tourism. We got to make sure that that right, once it start again, then it means it's a backtrack for the ones that we won for them to start doing that again. to send that message out that, it's clear that these workers deserve time with their family and not last minute dragging them out on these holidays that they need. Sometimes that's all the time that they have. If people need to work to save life or care for people or provide necessary service, then okay, that's important. That's a whole different thing. These workers should be well paid in that case. But for a retail store, really, let's keep these store closed. And these are just 9 days. 9 days that we're talking about, that these workers are saying that they deserve that time. That sometimes that's all the time they get to spend with their children or their families, right? So we want to fight to make sure that we keep these 9 measly days closed each year. Now I'd like to talk a bit more to turn to another important municipal issue. But before I do that, I am wondering, I'm looking at my agenda here. I know early on someone from PSAC was coming in and wasn't able to, and he's here. So, okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna move on next to the Toronto Paramedic Status Quo Red campaign, and then we'll just squeeze in PSAC report. So let's see who's here for this one. So TCU Local 416 is currently running a campaign to bring public awareness to the dire state Toronto Paramedic Service are in. This campaign highlights the shocking number of times the city of Toronto has 0 ambulances available to respond to emergency, which is known as status code red. And lately we are hearing a lot of that where there's no ambulance. We have Peter Shire is a vice chair, and Charles LaBelle, and again, steward of the Toronto Paramedic Service Unit here from 416 to give an outline of the campaign and to let us know how we can help to support. So I'm going to turn over to Peter and Charles to update us on status code red. Peter and Charles, welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and good evening, brothers, sisters, siblings. It's good to be able to talk to you. This is my 20th year being a paramedic in the city of Toronto. I've worked in Toronto my entire career, and I'm also the vice chair of the unit within Toronto Civic Employees Union Local 416 for the paramedics. My friend Charles, I'll let him introduce himself.
I am Charles LaBelle. I'm the paramedic with Toronto Paramedic Service. 18 years in the shop steward, and I'm hoping everybody can see the screen I'm sharing right now.
Yep.
Yes, excellent. So we're going to take the time to share with you the campaign that we've been running, which is called Status Code Red. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. We share information weekly on the current status of paramedics in Toronto.
So Toronto is made up of some 1,400 paramedics that serve the citizens of Toronto. We also, paramedics in Ontario are actually provincially and municipally funded, and a paramedic can do calls anywhere in Ontario. So we do have some bridging out into York region to our sister unions up there, and into PO. We do calls for them, and they do calls for us. Over the past 20 years, which I think is pretty much a common theme in the labor fight, governments have slowly chipped away at what was a robust system. We used to have the ability to not only handle the day-to-day calls, but also have what we refer to as surge capacity to be able to do those moments when there's a large event in Toronto that we have to respond to. We have enough people to continue to do the core business, which is responding to 911 calls, but we can also do large events. Over the time, the city has, there was a period of 10 years where the city of Toronto did not hire any paramedics above attrition. And lucky me, that was my first 10 years here. But those 10 years, all that happened was we took away any surge capacity that we had in the system, so that now we have the unenviable position of being only able to do just in time response to our call volume, and quite often we get very overwhelmed.
So in this slide, we show that code reds, essentially when there's 0 ambulances available to service the citizens of Toronto, they have increased dramatically over the last 6 years. In 2022, there was a daily average of about 5 hours and 36 minutes where there was less than 10% ambulances available to the city for emergency. So that accounts to about less than 5 ambulances available to service all of Toronto. If you look at the stats here, we see the dramatic rise in code reds. And in 2022, we saw a 2,492 incidents of 0 ambulances available. If we look at under 5 ambulances available throughout the year, there was over 48,000 incidents.
And you might ask what happened in 2020 there. That's the pandemic, and during 2020, call volumes dropped significantly for a significant amount of time. People were not calling 911 unless they absolutely had to, for lots of reasons, but mainly because they were scared to leave their homes. So along with the idea of not only having units available, the more units we have available, the more likely we are to get to a caller in a reasonable amount of time. It was, I believe it was either the McGuinty or the Wynne government that removed the requirement for the provincial requirement for ambulances to respond in a certain amount of time, and made it something that the individual ambulance service providers, and the city of Toronto is an ambulance provider, it allowed them to set the time that we can take to get to our most serious calls. And the number of calls that we get each year increases by about 4%. And so when over this period of 20 years, when we didn't add any more paramedics, we also didn't add any more vehicles, which meant that we weren't getting to the calls as fast. And we've seen a general trend that now our serious calls on average take us over 14 minutes to get to. And that's completely unacceptable. We definitely don't feel comfortable. We're a group of people that want to get out there and help. It drives us insane that the first words out of most of our paramedics' mouths when they arrive on scene is, "Sorry, it took us so long." And that's crushing for someone that is there to try and help and save someone.
So the effects on the staff are essentially horrible. We give it to the city of Toronto. They have tried to increase our staffing, but they haven't been able to actually hire enough people to meet their staffing plan that was decided in 2019 to hire an average of 60 more above the count every year from 2019 to 2022. There's been an unprecedented attrition of paramedics during that time, where if we look at last year, 2022, there was over 120 resignation, and in 2021 there was 150 resignations. So we might be trying to add 60 paramedics, but we're bleeding just as many.
And I think the problem that what our major problem of trying to convey is, and I one of my roles is I do all the return to works of our paramedics that have been injured on the job. The vast majority of those injuries are psychological injuries, and what is hard to sort of get across is where our paramedics are going is elsewhere, just because they can't cope with the pace in Toronto. And the reality is that if we have more staff, we can spread that space out to more people. And you have some semblance of hope that you will have some time in between a bad call and the next call to regain your composure, and also for self-care. It's become very evident that the pace has a direct impact on your occupational stress and the injuries you suffer from seeing these things. Paramedics, we love what we do. We absolutely, it is the best job in the world most of the time, but sometimes it's the worst job in the world. And what I am so proud of my members of the work we do. These are the best paramedics in Canada by far, in my opinion, which is a little bit slanted, but for sure, they go out there and they do these jobs, and the expectation, I think, my job as their representative is to make sure that society reaches back and says, don't worry, we'll help you when you need help. And so that's what we're seeing is we're unable to retain our medics. More medics are hurt than ever before. We're actually having trouble getting people to come to Toronto as a job opportunity for several factors, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But it is dire straits when we don't have enough staff. It's recognized by the employer, by council, and we can't get people to come and work here or stay working here. We've got a big problem on our hands, and it's a vicious circle.
So bottom line is our staff are just overwhelmed and getting burnt out, getting hurt. If you look at the overtime, we work 30% of our staff is working on overtime regularly without breaks. So we are afforded 30 minutes breaks in a 12-hour shift, and we don't even get that 30 minutes most of the time. So what's happening here is that most paramedics are deciding to leave the city of Toronto and work in areas such as Durham region, where their wages are higher and the call volume's lower, and there's no commuter. There's no commute to work. So here we're showing resignations. As you can see, our resignations have increased quite a bit. So when I started as a paramedic just over 17 years ago, you never heard of paramedics leaving the career. You never heard of them the job or resigning. But all of a sudden, in the last few years, we've seen an increase where that we've never seen before. We're looking at 2021, we saw 10% of our staff leave, and these are very huge numbers and creating lots of problems because we're not able to get people to replace them. And then what we're finding is that our because a lot of our older paramedics are leaving too, the mentors, over 50% of our staff is under 5 years. In this slide, we talk about occupational stress, and this is something that's gone crazy high. So occupational stress has risen fourfold since 2017. Previous cost has increased to approximately $14 million in 2022. The injuries are intrinsically linked to workloads. Assaults on paramedics are up 72.9% since 2021. And communicable disease exposures are 7% since 2021. This rise is clearly demonstrates the danger paramedics faced during the pandemic.
So as the city grows and more people come, and we are also, I mean, the one thing that I think we need to stress is we were already treating a pandemic or an endemic that was going on before the pandemic ever showed up, and that has continued. The opioid crisis in Toronto is overwhelming, and certainly for some of our stations is and paramedics they are touched by it not only daily but multiple times through the days. So the stresses were still there, even when our medics prior to pandemic. The pandemic, I think, just heightened the strain. And during the pandemic, a lot of the issues that I was hearing from my members was that they would work a shift, spend that whole shift being run off their feet, and either not go home, go to some alternate place because they were scared of taking home whatever the mystery that they were treating out there was, or go home and be down in the basement separated from the ones that provided the support. So the morale has sank. We have put out a recent morale survey. We did a morale survey in 2015, which was followed by a unanimous council vote that promised that the employer, or directed the employer, to look into morale and solve morale. They changed it. They washed the term from morale to employee engagement, but I always remind them that it's morale. And the thing is that when I did this survey again, the results were actually worse than they were prior to that. So we have some work to do. We've made some gains, and we have some ideas, and we're constantly trying to help the employer realize what the best ideas are doing. But we need support from the public at large too, to just help leverage us in making sure that we can hire the number of paramedics we need, and that these comments that you're seeing on the page right now aren't the norm, because these paramedics are asking for help when they say things like it's toxic and degrading and stressful.
So I would talk about solutions. Well, we had a POMAX report done in 2013 that identified how we can improve staffing and improve our response times. Essentially, we need an average of 27 answers available 90% of the time to have confidence and reach our target response time. And right now we sit on average at less than 5 ounces. So this 27 is a far stretch right now to get our response times back to 9 minutes. We would have to do a lot of hiring. I won't get too much into detail about the formula, but essentially we need to increase our requirements to about 216 ounces over a 24-hour period. Now we're averaging somewhere around 120.
So I guess we've probably taken enough time tonight. We are certainly open to you contacting us through this Code Red Facebook page. What we do our ask of the delegates tonight and those that you represent is, if you could go to any of our Code Red social media platforms and just click like and share, because those numbers, we've seen an increased number of people getting into that. It provides us the longer bar to leverage our position with the stakeholders, and we would really appreciate the support. So thank you for listening to Charles and I tonight, and thank you for the opportunity, and we certainly look forward to any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so So you heard the instruction. If you can help, you're able to help and circulate. And if you have anything that you want to post in the chat, Charles and Peter, you could go ahead and post in the chat so they can have that as a takeaway for now. And thanks for sharing with us your information. It's we have this struggle, and we have, as I mentioned, we have to stay together and take on this fight together. Okay. All right. So just before we go any further, I'm gonna just jump in a little bit and ask for Craig Reynolds from PSAC to give us a quick report on what's happening before we move on to the next speaker. Craig, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you everyone on this call for affording me the space to speak with you this evening. I want to start by thanking each and every one of you who came out to our picket lines and support us. We had over 155,000 members on strike right across the country. That's members from Treasury Board as well as CRA. I'm pleased to announce that we dismantled our picket lines this morning because we have tentative agreements for both groups, which is amazing. We could not have accomplished that without the help of you folks. So I'm really grateful for that. Everyone came out and support us. We had actions right across the province from the different borders, the airport, even down on in the financial district yesterday, and you folks came out. I really appreciate it. We will probably be looking for your support again because one of the reasons I was late this evening is because our members at Woodbine Casino is facing a potential lockout from the employer, and which would be a shame. We have employers who are making millions of dollars daily, and they refuse to offer our members a fair wage. But that's something we will be communicating with you more as we go along. And again, I just want to thank you folks for the support. And if there's any questions, I can take them later on, or you can contact me directly. Thanks a lot, Andrea. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. And I see Susan posting in the chat for more information, takeaway for Peter and Charles. If anyone wanted, please go there. And okay, so I'll go up next. So, I did introduce early on, and just for you to know, for April 28th, it's an important day for us, and it's just behind us. Also, the Health and Safety Activist Award dinner that we had last week. You know that as trade union, this fight for better health and safety condition, it doesn't just stop there. We just before that in the day, we were gathering at 2 different locations again for the day of mourning, and a part of that, as we say, we mourn for the dead, but we also fight like hell for the living. And to also, we promise and we urge others to push that we can continue to improve every single workplace, that every worker can return home safe without any injury. That's so important, but we also know that we have to continue advocating for that. We continue to fight and to push for courts, the police to charge negligent employer with full penalty of the criminal code. And we got to continue. And with that, we also have with us here to talk a bit about the Westray bill is Andrew Alf from Steelworker, and I'm going to turn over to Andrew at this moment to update us. So Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Yes, as Andrea mentioned, I'm from the Steelworkers Toronto Area Council. I'm an injured worker rep there. And I just wanted to talk today about the Westray law. Not everybody is familiar with this law. There was a resolution passed around in the email, so we're looking for your support today. And this law is based on a terrible incident that occurred May 9th, 1992. There was a massive blast caused by a buildup of methane gas and coal dust that erupted from a Westray mine in Pictou County, Nova Scotia. This killed 26 miners and left the bodies of 11 trapped underground. This was the direct cause of negligent employers who put profits before the health and safety of their workers. The steel workers were actually in an organizing drive at the time of the explosion. So we have a special connection to those who were involved in the rescuing attempts at the mine. So we wanted to show a video today from one of those rescuers, just to show how serious this was on those involved. Obviously, the families and the town suffered greatly, but the important thing to take away from that accident is the fact that the Westray Law came into effect 2004. It created a legal duty for all persons directing work and organizations for the act of their representatives who are criminally negligent. A lot of us, when there's a fatality on a work site, assume it's up to the Ministry of Labor to take care of things. But what this bill does, or has attempted to do, is actually charge those responsible for negligence, including those in the corporations, to be charged under the criminal code. It's shamefully underutilized. It is as far as since 2022, there were only 9 successful prosecutions under the Westray amendments. However, workplace fatalities are on the rise. We often quote the number of 1,000 per year. The Workers' Health and Safety Center has come up with a statistic through research from the University of Ottawa that actually multiplies that number by 9 to 13 times, as that number of 1,000 is reported by workers' compensation boards who wish to keep this number low. So what we can do is hold people responsible under the criminal code, hold corporations responsible, and there's some asks that are in the resolution that was sent around again by the Labor Council. And following this presentation, if you want to go to a website that was also provided in the resolution, it's a Stop the Killing campaign by the steelworkers, and it's to lobby government to educate and to actually have law enforcement use this law. So if we could just show a video. It is from Vernon Therold. He was one of the people involved in the rescue attempts, and
this video is brought to you by Straight Goods News.
Thank you very much.
Canada's alternative online news source.
And a reminder, this will be followed by debate on the statement. So please stay tuned for that.
Thank you, Susan.
My memories of Westray 20 years ago is this time 20 years ago, I would have been down underground May the 8th, 92 on an overtime shift. That night going home after the overtime shift. Next morning I got a call at 5:30 from my sister-in-law. She was happy to hear my voice. Because I asked her why, and she said, "There's sirens heading over to the mine there." I said, "Well, probably another cave-in. We had quite a few in the last month." So I hung up the phone, went back, lay down. I get back up 7 o'clock to head over to work. I didn't live far from the mine site there. I walked out my door and I could see down. When I come out my door, there's just something about Pitt County that morning that hit me. But then it really hit me when I drove down the Blue Acres and the Mounties were sitting there. And he asked me where I was going. I said, I was heading to work. He said, no, you're not. The mine blew up. Well, that was hard to take. But later on, an hour later, we ended up being in the fire hall with the families, getting together, and we got some coverage of what was going on. Then we had the mine management, Phillips, come over and wanted rescue workers to go down. I wasn't on the rescue squad yet because I only worked there for 6 months. My hand went up automatically. I didn't put it up, it just went up automatically. I went over with the few others and we got briefed. And the chaos that was going on was just crazy at that mine site. Like, it was just hard to believe. And harder to believe was when I went down underground, being there 24 hours beforehand, and then going down on the rescue and seeing the mine blow up. I know what hell looks like after that. But we carried on. We tried to believe that we'd find some bodies, somebody alive. But after 5 days going on the rescue, no sleep, try to get a little bit of sleep that you could. But the adrenaline that us men worked under to keep us going for the 5 days until they called it off. After they called it off, I had some hard time sleeping, had to get some help. And then years passed on. I went to the inquiry. Believe it or not, I learned a lot in the inquiry, going to that inquiry. If I knew what I knew then, I wouldn't have went down underground. I would have said no the first day. Because the second day on the job, I was in a cave-in. There was a cave-in that we had to mock up and put arches in. But years went by, and then I ended up in Ottawa on a health and safety meeting in '99 with the steelworkers. They didn't know I was a miner. I was just there for the meeting, the health and safety through Trenton Works. But then Nancy Hudson and Steve found out that I was a miner, so they come over and asked me questions. And then 2000, I got a chance to lobby on Pyramid Hill here. I came up and I lobbied for that 2000. We got into the justice meeting, Peter MacKay's help and others, MP's help. Then we had to fight for that law, the West Ray bill. We didn't get it through that year. But back in 2002, we were back to lobby again for another 2 weeks. Didn't get passed in. 2003, we come back up on the Hill. And we got the bill passed. The bill got passed through the House. And then in the Royal Senate, it only took a week, less than a week, with the help of the senators, to get the bill passed in Royal Senate. So I was happy to hear. I looked up at the sky, the heavens, and said to the 26 men up there, I just said, there you go, guys. We got a bill that this here West Ray will never happen again. That was 2003. The bill got passed 2004. Here we are, 2012. Like, I was happy back in 2003 when the bill got passed, the Royal Senate. But over the years, I didn't see it being used. There's charges. but it's not being forced. I said last night, Westray, they gave us a booklet, and I still have that booklet here. It's from Westray Coal Health and Safety booklet. They gave it to us. It didn't help the mine. The mine blew up, killing 26 men. So the C-45 Westray bill, it was passed by Royal Assent, passed in, let's use it. Back when the mine, 20 years ago, my kids were young. Today, 20 years later, I got grandkids, the same age as my kids were back then. I sure love to see something done so it will protect my kids' future, my grandkids, and everybody worldwide too there. But I just want to thank the steel workers for letting me to lobby the time on the Hill to help get the bill passed. But I just hope something is done now. Like, we're long enough. It's been long enough. That's
Okay. So as Susan mentioned, we have a statement, and I'm going to open it up for discussion. Anyone would like to speak on this statement? Is there any speaker?
Yeah, I see two people with their hands up, Andrea, Hendrik
Okay.
Brooklyn and Dave Callahan.
Okay, I'm sorry. So Hendrik, go ahead, and then Dave.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm rising to speak on this motion and to support it with a lot of feelings in my heart, if I'm being honest. You know, I've not seen the video that we just saw before this week, but I've seen a number like it, stories of friends, loved ones, family of the 26 people whose lives were taken from them on that day in 1992. People who just wanted to go to work, people who just wanted to trade an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and they lost absolutely everything. They lost their lives, and their families and loved ones, in many cases, their lives were destroyed as well. And I gotta say, one of the primary feelings in my heart when I talk about this is anger. Genuine anger that not just for the disaster itself and the negligence that led to it, but that in the 30 years since then, it has only been, I think it was 2016 was the first and only time to this day that anyone has actually served prison time for their criminal liability in killing a worker, which was actually related to an incident right here in the GTA. Some of us may remember the scaffold collapse disaster, Christmas Eve 2009, where 4 workers were killed and a 5th injured, and where the manager involved had not only given some of these people less than an hour of training before sending them up on a scaffold, but had also tried to talk the survivors of the disaster into covering up his own criminal negligence in order to cover up his own culpability. But I don't think anyone in this room has enough blinders on to believe that that's the only time that it's been deserved. And there have been other prosecutions, but most of them have resulted in fines or have resulted in nothing. And that is a real failure of political will, and it's an indictment of the successive conservative and liberal governments in the more than 20 years now since Westray bill has become law. That more has not been done and that action has not been taken. And you know, but I don't want to shy away from that anger, because that anger in my heart is the only thing that keeps us safe. You know, that's the thing we need to remember, is that our pressure may make liberal and conservative governments sometimes do the right thing, but they will never truly have our back. It is workers who care about the safety of workers. It's us workers who understand that our life and death is not something to be negotiated or haggled over. It's not something to be fined away. It is an issue of life and death, and only we understand those stakes, and only the labor movement can speak for workers to ensure that those stakes are taken as seriously as they need to be. So I take this, I thank the Labor Council for this statement and for this motion. And I take this moment to rededicate myself to that fight, because the tragedy of Westray is that it is Canadian history, but it is not past. This fight is not over, even 30 years later. And I thank the Toronto Labour Council for drawing attention to it and for passing this motion, and I rise in support of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dave?
Okay, I'd like to thank Hendrik for his remarks. I completely share them. Well said. I want to say a couple of things. I've been a labor delegate for many years now. And in the course of that, I have brought issues like that swing stage collapse on Christmas Eve to the members of my local to point out about the Westray law. So I'm going to say a couple of things about all of this, because there are two things that, in fact, there's one thing that I'll say, okay, it's a campaign now. And what do I mean by that? Well, if it weren't for the steelworkers, we would not even have the Westray law. So thank God for the steelworkers. That has put us on a path. But it used to be the slogan was, kill a worker, go to jail. And I cannot tell you, I have said that many times. Well, now the steelworkers are saying, stop the killing, enforce the law. I say, okay, we're in a campaign. I'm fine with campaigns. That swing stage collapse was back 14 years ago in 2009. And it actually, as Hendrik has mentioned, it was a successful Westray conviction among the very few times. And even upon appeal, there was 3.5 years of prison time for the supervisor of those workers who fell to their deaths. At the time of the trial, discussion arose about how seldom the Westray law had been invoked, primarily because, and this is still in this evening's paper for consideration by the delegates, Crowns, police, and provincial inspectors who work under the provincial labor law, still, they just don't seem to understand that when serious injury and death occurs in a workplace, you don't think about provincial law. You should be automatically, if you're doing one of those jobs, be thinking Westray. That's what should come to your mind. Maybe it's a Westray investigation and conviction and courtroom trial and all the rest. But the fourth point in this recommendation, and I understand it's a campaign, I just want to point something out. It looks like it's suggesting that the initial investigation will be done by a provincial Ministry of Labor inspector. And then it's as if it's a suggestion that those inspectors will be trained. They will reach out to the police when there is a possibility that Westray Amendment charges are warranted. I just don't understand this. I think that what should happen is if there's serious injury and death, you automatically, mandatory, report to the police and the Crowns. Because Westray was not about just the deaths of those miners. It was also about a long-standing management policy of negligence that made those deaths inevitable. With mandatory reporting, the police and the Crowns would be able to see a pattern of negligence by an employer and be able to bring charges under Westray when a pattern of serious injury and death has occurred over an extended period of time without the urging of the provincial labor ministry that does not deal with criminal law, the Westray law. And I'm thinking at this point about a press progress report on Fiera Foods. This is a Toronto-based bakery that has made headlines numerous times over the years in connection to stories about hazardous workplace conditions. The company has faced hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines and is linked to at least 5 deaths from 1999 to 2016, and they're a bakery. Premier Ford had a law on his desk to protect temp workers back in 2018, and it's no more. That's really a shame that he's not interested in protecting workers, even though he claims, vote for me, I'm with you. No, he's not. Something that came up in the original reporting on that swing stage collapse that I recall from the time, by some marvelous, just a chance occurrence, a police officer was the first one on the scene. Probably he was just listening to police radio, he was driving around. Maybe he was even off duty. I don't know all that, but I do know that he went to the scene of the apartment building and was starting to do a police investigation. The inspector from the Provincial Ministry of Labor showed up after he was already doing that investigation. And the inspector from the Labor Ministry said, this is my jurisdiction, you should leave. And he said, no, It's a police matter. I'm continuing my investigation. And I've never forgotten that, because what ultimately happened was when it got to a courtroom following a police investigation, Westray actually happened and we had a conviction, and on appeal, it was not thrown out and there was actual jail time. So in that case, the company's negligence was under Westray, a criminal law under the federal criminal code, not a provincial labor law. And I appreciate that the steelworkers are making this a campaign and all, but I look at that and I think you're sort of still saying, well, we'll let the province sort of have first say on this. And if they think to talk to the police and the Crowns, well, if it's their judgment and discretion that maybe Westray is a possibility here, we'll let you know. I'm saying.
So I'm going to ask you to, if you could wrap up, please. I'm not trying to rush you too much, but we have a bit of.
I was just about at the end of my remarks.
Thank you.
Because I was thinking that we should maybe think about further stages in this, because until we can make this mandatory, I think that we're still going to be struggling and fighting over this till we get actual justice, so we have a culture of occupational health and safety in our workplaces. Okay, that's my remarks. And sorry
Thank you
for the
very much.
extension on them.
Okay, thank you. So, Susan, do you need to put it up again? And we're going to put out a motion to accept the statement.
Are you ready for me to launch it, Andrea, or do we need a motion?
Sure. So yeah, I'm going to ask for a motion to accept this statement. Skylar, you can go ahead. So the poll is up.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. And it's passed. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move over to correspondent. Jinky, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. We have 2 correspondents for today. We received a request from IASI Local 58, who is celebrating their 125th anniversary, to purchase an ad in their anniversary publication. The Executive Board recommends the purchase of a business card advertisement at the cost of $750. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this request?
I'll move.
Thank you, Brother Comrade Kingsley. May I have a seconder?
I'll second Carol Carpenter.
Thank you, Carol. We will now ask for the poll.
Okay, closing it off in 3, 2, 1. And that's passed.
Thank you, Skylar. The second piece of correspondence is a request from the Toronto Women's Bookstore for a donation. The Women's Bookstore was established 50 years ago and played a very important role in the region's understanding of gender issues and often intersects with race, class, disability, sexual orientation, and more. While the bookstore is closed some years ago, a group is organizing a 50th anniversary celebration to commemorate the bookstore and its role in the region. The Exec Board recommends a donation of $500. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder for this request. Thank you, Alex, for being the mover. And Laura, I will ask you to be the seconder.
I always feel like this is like waiting for the last couple of popcorns to pop in the microwave. Okay, I'm gonna close it.
Okay.
And it's passed. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you, Skylar. That concludes the correspondence for this evening. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. So we are going to go over first we're going to go over to the CLC report. But before we do that, I just want to remind everyone, June 3rd is coming up. June 3rd is a provincial-wide day of action for the Enough is Enough campaign. I hope you are already in motion and are already saying enough is enough, and then getting ready to take action or already start the action. So for the Toronto region, we are going to gather in a rally at Nathan Phillips Square at noon on Saturday, June 3rd. Then after the rally, we're going to march. So again, we're going to fight back against the cost of living crisis as a movement, and labor and community is going to be doing this together. We're coming together to one more time say enough is enough. I'm going to invite you, if you haven't started organizing for it, to start. And if you are, start doing your checking off and inviting others to join us on Saturday, June 3rd. So please stay tuned and let's get ready. Hopefully the next meeting you're able to let us know how you're doing. So at this time, I'm going to turn over for the CLC report to Heather Erlin from the CLC. Heather, over to you.
No, Andrea, it's me.
Oh,
Felicia.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I still love you, Felicia.
I love you too.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Labor Council family. So good to see you all. Guess where I am? You're not in my bedroom. I'm in Montreal.
Come on now.
Yeah, I cannot wait to welcome those of you who are coming to convention. It's going to be a good one. So if you miss it, you're truly missing out. So I can't wait to see you all next week. I did not sleep last night at all, so I'm going on fumes here and I'm fading. So I'm going to make this very quick before I fall asleep on you all. Okay, big thank you to you all for your amazing day of morning events, both in York Region and Toronto. I wasn't able to make it because you already had 2 people from the CLC there, so I went elsewhere, but I saw the pictures, had a little bit of FOMO, but great job as always, and thank you for all of you who were able to participate in one or both of them. Next, I want to let you all know that we had a huge win on Bill C-228 on April 18th. The Senate did the right thing and they passed it. And with this, we're moving towards ensuring that the loss of pensions experienced by workers of Sears, Nortel, and Stelco, among others, will not happen again moving forward. So this bill is a big step in making that happen. And just so for those of you who don't know, Bill C-228 ensures workers are protected in the event of a company collapse. So if a fund is insolvent, the company will have to declare bankruptcy and give priority to pension payout or transfer funds into the pension plan to make it solvent. So this is amazing, and we're glad it's finally happened. It's way overdue. Next, I already told you all before, CLC Ontario Summer School and Women's School is back. The details are now out. The Women's School will be July 9th to the 14th, and the Summer School will be the week after that, the 16th to the 21st. And there are just over 100 spots available for each, and folks are already signing up. So please, if you're interested in attending, make sure you sign up and get that in. I will throw the links in the chat afterwards. Next, the ACTRA boycott is continuing. So they have been on lockout for over a year now. And unfortunately, they're not getting a fair deal. There's not enough negotiating happening. And in response to that, they've created a boycott campaign targeting the brands who are still utilizing the agencies. So this puts pressure to end the lockouts and get back to the bargaining table. And ACTRA has requested that the CLC endorse their boycott campaign. That was approved by the executive committee at the last meeting held on April 13th. So as a result, the CLC will support the campaign according to our boycott policy. I can put the link for that in the chat as well. And the details of their boycott can be found on their website. I can put that in the chat. And they are targeting the following brands: H&R Block, and look at that, it was tax time. If some of you are late like me, it's still tax time. The H&R Block is being targeted. Canadian Tire, Rogers, Wendy's, Home Hardware, Sleep Country. They're doing rotated targeting actions on that. So take a look at their site to find out where we are at. And we already heard about the great news of PSAC, so I don't need to build on that. Our president has already talked about June 3rd with Enough is Enough, the big event, so I don't need to speak about that. And again, Ontario Health Coalition, they're still working on their referendum. On Friday, May 26th and Saturday, 27th, they will hold the referendum, and there will be more than 1,000 voting stations across the province. So they're looking for you all to support, get the word out there. This is a huge campaign. Our health system is crumbling. And I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but we really need to speak with more folks because not everyone's fighting about this. Not everyone seems upset and up in arms about it. So it really is up to us to have the discussions with family, friends, colleagues, everyone, to make sure they vote and to make sure that they know that this is on Ford's agenda to privatize our healthcare system is already happening. We need to fight back and stop it. That's the report. I don't have any more energy left. Good to see you all. Have a
good to see you, Felicia. See you on the weekend. Thank you very much. And up next for Council's report, anyone from LEC or LCS, any report for Council's report?
I can give a quick report before
Go
Keith
ahead.
takes over. This Father Labor Community Services. So the big thing coming up is the Bromley Gala, which is June 14. You know, we thanks to Jeff, he actually gave us the IBW. We got now another place in the Scarborough. So the information came out, and I think Keith will talk more about that. But I hope that everybody can participate. This is to honor the legacy of Bromley, you know, and continue fighting racism within the union movement. And also it's kind of fundraising for labor community service for doing the job we are doing. That's not funny, that is fighting racism and doing anti-racism education and also doing the other campaigns like the Refugee Next Door campaign. So I think this is the big thing coming up for us. So stay tuned, it will be a very interesting program. And this is now in person. We came out of the virtual thing, so it will be in person this year. It will be a blended model, so everybody who wants to come online will be given that possibility, but also we will be in person this year. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from LEC? Okay, I don't think there's anything from LEC. So I'm going to move on to committee report. Equity Committee, Women's Committee,
Thank you, Madam
Education
Chair.
Committee.
This is Keith, USW 9197. And from the Equity Committee, I would like to echo what Faduma just said. Please, I would urge the locals to buy tables for this gala. The gala is going to be on June 14th. It's a Wednesday, and it's going to be at the Quasis Banquet Hall, 3474 Kingston Road. Also, I'd like to report that the IWalk conference is now scheduled to be held in the fall. Dates will be announced later, and that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other report from the committee? I'm gonna move on. Union report. Any reports from union? This is your time.
Yeah, I see hands up. John Cartwright, Laura Thompson, David Kidd.
Okay, thank you very much. John, go ahead.
Thanks, Andrea. Evening, brothers, sisters, comrades. I wanted to let people know about a really great event that's coming up on May the 15th. You know, in my part-time retirement, I'm the chair of the national chair of the Council of Canadians. And the council is working with the health coalitions, unions across the country to take the campaign around national pharmacare and win an actual national pharmacare program this year. It's part of the NDP accord that they've got with the federal government that must happen, but we're creating a mass movement to make sure that it's the full universal pharmacare program that Erica Huskins described in his important report a couple of years ago, but the Liberals have been backtracking and backtracking. So on the 15th of May at Perth Davenport Community Center, 1900 Davenport, Avi Lewis will be hosting a panel discussion. There'll be a lot of people there to talk about how we need to win national public pharmacare and how we can force the members of parliament in the Toronto area to take action and get this government to finally deliver that. It's the missing piece that's still left in Medicare. There's no other major industrialized country in the world that has a public healthcare system that does not include pharmacare. And we know the billions and billions will be saved if we can get that as a national program. And I'm always reminded, you know, it's not just for poor people. The costs of all of our health benefits are dramatically increased because of the skyrocketing costs of drugs. And Leo Gerard used to talk about, you know, being a union, the steelworkers that bargained both north and south of the border, and they had to bargain an extra $5 an hour in the States to make up for the healthcare that we got as Canadians as part of our commons. And it's not that much in terms of drug costs, but it's an awful lot of money. So it's important for every working family, every working person in this country to be able to make sure that we win a national universal public pharmacare program. I'm going to put a link in the chat and ask people to go and check it out on May the 15th. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Andrea. Laura Thompson, OPSU SACPO, Local 503. So obviously there's been a lot of discussion around the municipal election, understandably. One of the issues, among the many issues, is the future of Ontario Place, and in that, the future of the Ontario Science Centre. Folks are probably familiar with the announcement that the plans for the Ontario Science Centre to be relocated to the Ontario Place. Beyond this being a horrible idea that nobody asked for, it also will directly, it will compromise the Science Centre, an institution that's familiar for a lot of us and been foundational for a lot of us and our education understanding of science. And the quality of the services and the institution itself is in jeopardy if it's relocated to Ontario Place, given that it will be a significantly reduced size. It also makes the job of 400 OPSU SEPO members much more precarious, given the relocation. So there will be a rally happening on Saturday at 10 a.m. outside of the Science Centre. And Andrea, I've seen the agenda, and you'll be speaking there as well, and thank you for that. And we encourage everybody to come out. And also, I'll just put in the chat, there is also a link on the OPSU SEPO website to sort of sign up and follow the campaign. But yeah, if you can be in the rally on Saturday, I'll be there. I'll be a bunch to kind of stand up for the folks who are directly impacted by this, along with standing up for everyone who will be impacted by this and the need to save our Science Centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David Kidd, QP79, just to bring you up to date on the latest event from the Toronto Workers' History Project. Next Tuesday night, we are looking back at Spadina on Strike, the 1986 International Lady Garment Workers Strike. Janet Dassinger is going to be speaking. Winnie Ng is going to be speaking. Marcy Ponte is going to be speaking. And Herman Stewart. Lisa Saglowski, the photographer who took many of the photos of the strike, will be in attendance, and this will be moderated by Meyer Simiteki from Toronto Metropolitan University. Hope you can attend. A notice will go out to you all soon, but it'll be next Tuesday night, May 9th. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Chris, over to you.
Hi, I'm not reporting on behalf of the local, but I do have, I'm privileged to work on the Postal Workers Convention this week, and I bring a message of hi from Abney, who can't be here tonight, but he said hello. He asked me to say hello.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Good stuff. Okay, Kingsley, over to you.
Kingsley Kwok, Opsu Safpo, Local 575. I would like to report that at our convention 2 weeks ago, delegates voted for a constitutional amendment to add 7 executive board member positions to be elected at the next election to represent 7 equity-seeking groups, including women, Indigenous, Rainbow Alliance, racialized workers, disability rights, young workers, and women. I think I got all 7. And so it is a milestone. It was kind of down to the wire, and we weren't sure whether delegates would vote in the threshold of more than 2/3, and I'm happy to report that that did happen. Thank you very much, sister.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're moving through. I'm gonna check if there's anyone else before I move on. Okay. Ellen, are you speaking on the AREX? I think I don't see anyone. All right, so I I just want to say thank you to everyone. I know it's late and really appreciate it that you stay on. Not for me, but this is very important discussion that we're having. And whoever can go out on the weekend, as Helen announced, please go out and support. And there's many things. We talk a bit about the holiday shopping. That's also important that we make sure that this is not something that we are reversing the work that we sit by, and the reverse of the work that we've done to stop it. It start again. That's what this fight is about. We always have to continue taking on the fight to make sure that they're not pushing back things that we gain. That's so important. We heard a number of workers' experience, and the fact that the little time that they get to spend time with their family, it's also just yank away from them. They're not gaining from this. It's just a sheer greed. We got to keep that fight up on all the things. And once more, just to love each other. You know, we early on remember one of our comrade, Carol, and it's really me reaching out to all of you that this is where we take the time to care and to love for each other, because we don't know what's out there for us, but we do know that we have each other, and we need to cherish that. So I want to say thank you. Have a good night. And Jennifer, Skylar, whoever have the music to go, please put it on. Thank you.